The scent of sizzling ribeye hung in the air as Mia Johnson balanced 3 plates along her forearm, weaving expertly between tables in the dimly lit steakhouse. Her feet ached after the 6-hour shift, but she kept her smile-bright customer service face. She called it especially for table 7, where he sat alone again. The man who always ordered the same thing: medium rare New York strip, baked potato with everything on the side, and a glass of Cabernet that cost more than she made in an hour. "Your usual spot is ready, Mr. Xavier," Mia said, gesturing to the corner table that somehow always remained empty when he arrived, despite the restaurant's popularity. Noah Xavier looked up from his phone and smiled, the kind of smile that reached his eyes and made Mia momentarily forget the exhaustion weighing down her shoulders. "Thank you, Mia. You remembered." "Hard to forget someone who tips like you do," she replied with a gentle laugh, leading him to his table. She didn't add that she'd memorized his order, his preference for extra horseradish with his steak, or the way he always loosened his tie exactly 2 minutes after sitting down. Noah settled into the leather booth, automatically reaching for the wine list, though they both knew what he would order. "How are your classes going?" he asked, surprising her as he always did with his genuine interest in her life. Mia tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "Midterms are killing me, but I'm hanging in there. 1 year left until I get my business degree." "Business? I thought you were studying education." His brow furrowed slightly. "Changed my major last semester. Turns out I'm better with numbers than with finger paintings." She smiled, impressed he'd remembered her original major at all. Most customers barely registered her name. "Well, the business world would be lucky to have you," Noah said, his dark eyes holding hers for a moment too long before returning to the menu. What Mia couldn't know, was that Noah Xavier wasn't just another businessman in a nice suit. The watch on his wrist cost more than her entire college tuition. The real estate development company he'd built from the ground up now employed over 3,000 people across the country. Forbes had recently valued his net worth at just over $2 billion. But at Donovan's Steakhouse, he was just a regular who enjoyed good food and, increasingly, the company of a certain waitress with bright green eyes and a mind sharper than most executives he dealt with daily. The usual. She asked, pen poised over her notepad though she'd already written his order. "Actually," Noah said, closing the menu, "surprise me tonight." Mia raised an eyebrow. "Feeling adventurous, Mr. Xavier?" "Something like that," he replied with a slight smile. "And please, it's Noah." "Noah," she repeated, testing the name. "Well then, I hope you trust my judgment. Completely." When she returned with a perfectly cooked bone in ribeye with truffle butter, Noah's eyes lit up. "How did you know ribeye's actually my favorite? I just order the strip out of habit." "You stare at it every time it passes your table," Mia said with a knowing grin. "Plus, you strike me as a man who appreciates something with a little more character than a New York strip." Noah laughed a genuine laugh that made several nearby diners turn their heads. Mia realized she'd never heard him laugh like that before. It transformed his usually serious face, revealing dimples she hadn't noticed in the 6 months he'd been coming to Donovan's. "I clearly don't give you enough credit, Mia Johnson," he said, cutting into the steak with appreciation. When the dinner rush hit, Mia had to attend to her other tables, but she found herself gravitating back to Noah's corner more often than necessary. They talked about her classes between her trips to other tables, about his recent business trip to Japan, though he was vague on the details. About the book he was reading, a historical biography she'd finished last month, which led to a spirited debate on historical accuracy versus storytelling. By the time he'd finished his meal, the restaurant had begun to empty. Noah checked his watch, a gesture Mia had noticed he did precisely before asking for the check. "I should get going," he said, though he made no move to leave. "Big plans tonight?" Mia asked, sliding the leather folder with his bill onto the table. "Just more work," Noah replied with a rueful smile. "The glamorous life of a," he stopped himself, "of a workaholic." Mia nodded sympathetically. "I understand. Between classes and this job, my idea of excitement these days is doing laundry without running out of quarters." Noah chuckled as he placed his credit card in the folder without checking the total. There's something honest about that kind of life, though, straightforward, says the man with the custom-tailored suit, Mia teased, taking the folder. When she returned with his receipt, Noah had written his phone number below his signature, along with a note. In case you ever want to discuss historical biographies over coffee instead of steak. Mia felt her face flush as she looked from the receipt to Noah, who was now standing and slipping into his overcoat. "I'd like that," she said, surprising herself with her confidence. "Good," Noah replied simply. "Because I'd like to know more about Mia Johnson when she's not balancing steak plates." After he left, Mia stood holding the receipt longer than necessary, wondering what had just happened. She'd sworn off dating after her last relationship had imploded spectacularly a year ago. Between school and work, she barely had time to sleep, let alone start something new. Yet there was something about Noah Xavier that made her want to reconsider her self-imposed dating hiatus. What she didn't see was Noah sitting in his Tesla in the parking lot, staring at his phone and debating whether he'd made a mistake. Women usually pursued him for his money, his connections, his status. He'd learned the hard way to be cautious, but Mia was different. She looked at him like he was just a man, not a billion-dollar balance sheet. And that, more than anything, made him want to know her better. 3 days later, Mia sat across from Noah at a small coffee shop halfway between her apartment and downtown. She'd chosen the location-neutral territory, far from the steakhouse where their roles were clearly defined. "So," she said, stirring her latte, "when you're not eating alone at steakhouses and making waitresses recommend cuts of beef, what do you actually do?" Noah hesitated, a moment so brief she almost missed it. "Real estate development, primarily. I started small after college, buying and renovating properties, and things grew from there. Successful, I take it." Mia gestured to his cashmere sweater that, even to her untrained eye, screamed expensive. "I've been fortunate," Noah said carefully, "but enough about work. Tell me why business suddenly appealed to you more than teaching." Mia appreciated his redirection. "Honestly, student loans. I realized I was going into debt for a career that might never pay enough to get me out of it. Plus, my dad's small business nearly went under last year, and watching him struggle with the financial side of things made me realize there's a need for people who understand both the numbers and the human side of business." Noah leaned forward, genuinely interested. "What kind of business does your father run?" "A hardware store. Nothing fancy, but it's been in our family for 3 generations. The big box stores nearly killed it, but we've been repositioning as more of a specialty shop for restoration supplies. Historical homes, antique restoration, that sort of thing." "That's actually brilliant positioning," Noah said, his eyes lighting up. "There's a growing market for authentic restoration materials. Have you considered expanding the online presence to reach beyond your local market?" And just like that, they fell into a conversation that spanned hours. Noah offered suggestions about her father's business that showed a depth of knowledge Mia found impressive but not surprising. What did surprise her was how easily they talked, how one topic flowed into another until she realized with a start that the coffee shop was closing around them. "I can't believe it's been 4 hours, she said, checking her phone. "I haven't talked this long with someone since. Well, maybe ever." Noah looked equally surprised. "I've had business dinners that felt like they would never end after just 30 minutes. This felt like it just started." Outside, the evening air had turned chilly. Noah offered her his jacket, but Mia declined with a smile. "My car's just around the corner." "I'll walk you," he said, falling into step beside her. When they reached her battered Honda Civic, a stark contrast to whatever luxury vehicle he surely drove, Mia turned to face him. "I had a really good time, Noah. So did I." He paused, looking suddenly less confident than the man who commanded his corner table at Donovan's. "I'd like to see you again. Properly, I mean, dinner somewhere where you don't have to serve other tables in between our conversations." Mia felt her heart speed up. "I'd like that too." When Noah leaned down to kiss her, it was gentle and brief, a question more than a declaration. Mia found herself rising on her toes to answer, her hand resting lightly on his chest. When they pulled apart, she could feel her face flushing again, but this time she didn't mind. "I'll call you tomorrow," Noah said, his voice slightly rougher than before. "You better," Mia replied with more bravado than she felt. As she drove home, Mia couldn't help smiling to herself. There was something different about Noah Xavier, something genuine beneath the expensive clothes and reserved demeanor. What she didn't know was that, as Noah drove to his penthouse apartment downtown, he was making a decision that went against every cautious instinct he'd developed. He was going to tell her the truth about who he was, sooner rather than later. Because for the first time in years, he'd met someone he wanted to be honest with, someone who made him feel like just a man, not a billionaire with targets on his back. Their second date was at a small Italian restaurant where the owner greeted Noah like family. When the elderly man insisted on serving them himself and refused to bring a check at the end of the night, Mia raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess you helped him get this location," she asked as they stepped into the mild spring evening. Noah looked sheepish. "Something like that. His son and I were roommates in college." "You're full of surprises, Xavier," Mia said, slipping her hand into his as they walked toward the riverfront. "So are you, Johnson," he replied, squeezing her hand. "I've never met someone who can debate the merits of supply chain optimization and then switch to a passionate defense of Austin over the Brontes without missing a beat. Renaissance woman, that's me," she laughed. "Master of useless knowledge and carrying heavy trays without spilling." They stopped at a bench overlooking the water, the city lights reflecting on its surface. Noah seemed unusually quiet as they sat down. "Everything okay?" Mia asked, noticing his tension. Noah took a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you, and I'm not sure how." Mia's stomach tightened. Was this the part where he confessed he was married, had a secret family, was moving to Antarctica to study penguins? "I haven't been entirely forthcoming about my work," Noah continued, looking at the water rather than at her. "The real estate development company I mentioned, Xavier Developments, it's not just a company I work for. I founded it. I own it." Mia nodded slowly. "Okay, that's impressive, but why would you hide that?" Noah turned to face her now. "Because it's not just a modestly successful company. It's become something much larger than I ever anticipated. The last valuation put it at just over $3 billion. Mia blinked, processing his words. "3 billion? As in with a B?" "Yes," Noah said quietly, "and that makes my personal net worth just over $2 billion. I'm wealthy, Mia." "Extremely wealthy." Mia stared at him, connecting dots in her mind: the expensive but understated clothes, the way the restaurant owner had treated him, the casual way he'd offered business advice about her father's store, the watch she now realized probably cost more than her car. "Why are you telling me this now?" she finally asked. "Because I like you a lot, and I want to see where this goes, but I can't do that if I'm hiding such a significant part of who I am." Noah ran a hand through his dark hair. "In my experience, people change when they find out. They want things from me or they treat me differently. I wanted you to know me first, just as a man, not as a balance sheet." Mia was silent for a long moment, processing this revelation. Part of her was shocked, another part strangely unsurprised, as if some part of her had always known there was more to Noah Xavier than he let on. "So all those times you ate alone at Donovan's," she began. "I was trying to find a place where I could just be normal for an hour," Noah finished for her. "Where I could have a good meal without someone pitching me an investment opportunity or treating me like I'm different. And then there was this waitress with the quick wit who never seemed impressed by anything except how well I treated her coworkers, and the fact that I actually read books instead of just pretending to." Mia couldn't help but smile at that. "I did notice you were nice to Greg, and he's our most annoying busboy." Noah laughed, relief evident in his voice. "So, are you freaking out a little?" Mia admitted. "I mean, my student loan debt probably seems like pocket change to you." "Money doesn't define who you are, Mia," Noah said seriously. "Your ambition, your intelligence, your kindness, those things matter much more." Mia reached for his hand. "I appreciate you telling me, but I need some time to process this." It's not every day you find out you've been serving steaks to a billionaire. I understand, Noah nodded, though disappointment flickered across his face. Take all the time you need. The drive home was quiet, both lost in their thoughts. When Noah dropped her off at her apartment, building a decidedly unglamorous complex that now made her acutely self-conscious, he simply kissed her forehead and promised to call the next day. Inside her apartment, Mia collapsed onto her sofa, her mind racing. A billionaire. She'd been dating a billionaire. She'd recommended a ribeye to a man who could buy the entire cattle farm if he wanted. It was absurd, overwhelming. But as the initial shock wore off, Mia found herself remembering the way Noah's eyes crinkled when he laughed. How he really listened when she talked about her studies. How he'd never once made her feel like serving tables was beneath him. Money changed things. She wasn't naive enough to believe it didn't. But the question wasn't whether Noah had money. It was whether money had him. And from what she'd seen, Noah Xavier was still very much his own man, kind, thoughtful, and genuinely interested in her for reasons that had nothing to do with wealth. When Noah called the next day, Mia answered on the second ring. "I still want to see you," she said without preamble. "The billionaire thing is a lot, but I want to know you, Noah Xavier, bank account aside." She could hear the smile in his voice when he replied, "I was hoping you'd say that." Over the next few months, Mia learned what it meant to date someone with Noah's resources. Sometimes it was overwhelming, like when he casually mentioned his private jet while planning a weekend trip, or when she realized the small gathering at his home meant mingling with CEOs and celebrities. But more often, it was surprisingly normal. They cooked together in her tiny kitchen. They argued about movies. They fell asleep on her lumpy couch. Gradually, Mia introduced Noah to her world's Sunday dinners with her parents in their modest home, where her father grilled Noah about business until her mother scolded him for talking shop at the table. Game nights with her college friends, who were initially starstruck until they realized Noah was terrible at charades but ruthless at Monopoly. Through it all, Noah seemed genuinely happy, telling her once that these ordinary moments were more precious to him than any luxury his money could buy. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. The first time they were photographed together leaving a restaurant, Mia was unprepared for the online speculation about the mystery woman in the billionaire's life. When a particularly vicious comment suggested she was a gold digger, Mia had spiraled into doubt. "Maybe this is too complicated," she told Noah during a tense conversation in her apartment. "We come from different worlds. Maybe we're kidding ourselves thinking this can work." "Different worlds, same values," Noah had countered, taking her hands in his. "That's what matters, Mia. And if you're worried about what people think, I'm worried about what I think," Mia had interrupted. "I don't want to lose myself in your world. I don't want to become an accessory to your life." Noah had been quiet for a moment before responding with characteristic thoughtfulness. "Then we build a new world, together, one that takes the best of both." True to his word, Noah made efforts to blend their lives rather than absorb Mia into his. When he learned her father's hardware store was struggling again, he didn't simply write a check instead. He connected her father with a historical preservation society that needed exactly the specialized inventory the shop provided, creating a sustainable partnership rather than a temporary bailout. When Mia mentioned her student loans during a casual conversation, Noah didn't offer to pay them off, a gesture she would have refused anyway. Instead, he asked intelligent questions about loan forgiveness programs and helped her refinance at a better rate, respecting her independence while still supporting her. By the time Mia graduated with her business degree, their relationship had deepened into something neither had expected. She'd accepted a position with a non-profit business incubator, turning down Noah's casual offer of any position you want at Xavier Developments. She needed to make her own way, and he respected that. "I'm proud of you," Noah told her on graduation day, his arm around her waist as her parents took yet another photo. Not many people would turn down a cushy corporate job to help small businesses get off the ground. "Well, I had a pretty good example of what starting small and dreaming big can lead to," Mia replied, looking up at him with a smile. That night, after a celebration dinner with her family and closest friends, Noah took her to the rooftop garden of his penthouse apartment. The city lights stretched out below them, and for a moment, Mia felt like they were suspended between stars above and stars below. "I have something to ask you," Noah said, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. Mia turned to find him holding a small velvet box, and her heart stopped. "When I walked into Donovan's that first night and you showed me to my table, I had no idea my life was about to change," Noah began, his voice growing steadier. "I was just a man looking for a good steak and some solitude, but you really saw me in a way no one had in years." He took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "You've never been impressed by what I have, only by who I am. You've challenged me, supported me, and loved me for myself. You've shown me that the real luxury in life isn't private jets or penthouse views, it's finding someone who makes you feel at home wherever you are." Noah dropped to one knee, opening the box to reveal a ring that was elegant but not ostentatious, exactly her taste. "Mia Johnson, will you marry me? Not the billionaire, just the man who loves everything about you." Tears sprang to Mia's eyes as she nodded, not trusting her voice for a moment. "Yes," she finally managed. "Yes, I'll marry you, Noah Xavier, Steakhouse regular and horrible charades player." Noah laughed as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood to pull her into an embrace that felt like coming home. As they kissed under the night sky, Mia thought about the journey that had brought them here, from order taking to ring giving, from stranger to fiancé. "You know," she murmured against his lips, "if you hadn't been so picky about your corner table at Donovan's, we might never have met." "Best table reservation I ever made," Noah replied with a smile, "though I think I got the better end of the deal." "Definitely," Mia agreed with a laugh. "You got a lifetime of steak recommendations, and all I got was a billionaire who loves me." "Fair trade," Noah said, holding her close as the city twinkled below them, a testament to his business empire, but nothing compared to the woman in his arms, the waitress who had served him steak and unknowingly offered him the most valuable thing money couldn't buy. A love based not on what he was worth, but on who he was. Their wedding was a blend of worlds, intimate despite the high-profile guest list, elegant without being extravagant. Mia had insisted on getting married in her hometown church rather than some exotic destination, and Noah had readily agreed. When she walked down the aisle toward him, Noah's expression of pure love and wonder was worth more than his entire fortune. At the reception, held in the beautifully restored historical hotel downtown, a Xavier Developments project, though few guests knew that, Noah surprised Mia by having the chef from Donovan's Steakhouse cater part of the meal, including, of course, the perfect ribeye. "For the record," Noah whispered as they shared their first dance, "I knew exactly what I was hungry for when I kept coming back to that steakhouse, and it wasn't the steak." Mia laughed, resting her head against his chest. "And here I thought my steak recommendations were just that good." "Oh, they were excellent," Noah assured her, "but not nearly as excellent as the company." A year later, Mia stood in the doorway of their home, a compromise between Noah's preference for urban luxury and her love of cozy spaces. It was a renovated historical property with modern amenities but character intact, large enough for comfort but not so grand as to feel impersonal. She watched as Noah, billionaire CEO and founder of Xavier Developments, sat cross-legged on the floor of their living room, patiently assembling a crib. "You know, we could have had someone do that," she said, resting her hands on her growing baby bump. Noah looked up with a grin. "And miss out on the authentic new parent experience of cursing at incomprehensible instructions." "Never." Mia laughed, joining him on the floor as best she could. The mighty Noah Xavier, defeated by Swedish furniture design. "Not defeated," Noah corrected, tightening a screw. Strategically challenged. As they worked together to prepare for their daughter's arrival, Mia reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From waitress and customer to partners in every sense, they'd built something neither of them could have created alone, a life balanced between ambition and simplicity, wealth and purpose. Noah had taught her that money, used thoughtfully, could create opportunity rather than just luxury. She'd taught him that connection, not acquisition, was the true measure of wealth. Together, they'd learned that love wasn't about finding someone who completed you, but someone who challenged you to be your best self while accepting you exactly as you were. When their daughter arrived 3 months later, Lily Catherine Xavier, named after both their grandmothers, Noah held her with the wonder of a man who suddenly understood that all his achievements paled in comparison to this tiny life they'd created. "She has your eyes," he whispered to Mia, who was watching them from her hospital bed with exhausted joy. "And your determination," Mia replied with a smile. "Did you hear how loudly she announced her arrival?" Noah laughed softly, carefully returning their daughter to Mia's arms. "I have a feeling she's going to be running Xavier Developments before she's 30. Or starting her own rival company," Mia suggested. With her mother's business degree and her father's ambition, the sky's the limit. As their family grew, so did their shared vision. Noah established a foundation focused on small business development in underserved communities, with Mia eventually taking the helm as executive director. Her experience at the nonprofit incubator had given her insights that complemented Noah's business acumen perfectly. They maintained traditions that kept them grounded: monthly dinners at Donovan's Steakhouse, where the staff now greeted them like old friends. Sunday visits with Mia's parents, whose hardware store had expanded to 3 locations with their historical preservation specialization. Game nights where their competitive streak still flared over Monopoly. 5 years into their marriage, as they prepared for a quiet anniversary dinner at home after putting Lily to bed, Noah presented Mia with a small package. "What's this?" she asked, unwrapping it to find a framed receipt, the original check from Donovan's with Noah's phone number written at the bottom. "The best investment I ever made," Noah said with a smile, taking a chance on a waitress who saw past the suit. Mia touched the glass covering the faded receipt, remembering that night with perfect clarity. "I still can't believe you had the guts to write your number down like that." Mr. Confident Billionaire was actually nervous. "Terrified," Noah corrected, refilling their wine glasses. "I sat in my car for 10 minutes afterward wondering if I'd made a complete fool of myself." "Well, you hadn't," Mia said, leaning over to kiss him. "Though I did think you were just a really successful middle manager with good taste in watches." Noah laughed. "In many ways, that's still exactly what I am, just with better resources." As they toasted their anniversary, Mia thought about the paths that had brought them together: her decision to work at Donovan's to help pay for school, Noah's preference for dining alone at that particular steakhouse. So many small choices that had led to this moment, this life they'd built together. "You ever wonder," she asked, "what would have happened if you'd chosen a different restaurant that night?" Noah considered the question seriously, as he did most things. "I believe we would have found each other eventually," he said. "Some connections are just meant to be." "The billionaire and the waitress," Mia mused with a smile, "sounds like a bad romance novel." "I prefer to think of it as the businessman and the business student," Noah replied, taking her hand. "Two people who recognized something in each other that had nothing to do with serving tables or net worth." Later that night, as Noah slept beside her, Mia reflected on their journey with gratitude. She'd once served tables at a steakhouse, unaware that the quiet regular in the corner booth was a billionaire hungry for more than just a good meal. But what they'd found together was richer than any fortune: a partnership based on mutual respect, shared values, and a love that saw beyond surface appearances to the truth of who they were. In the end, it wasn't about the billionaire falling for the waitress. It was simply about two people who found in each other exactly what they needed and who built together a life more valuable than all the wealth in the world.